breaking news, the biggest news that we were all waiting for. There's been an extension of the lockdown, a further period of 2 weeks with effect from May 4th when the lockdown was actually meant to be lifted, but an extension of 2 weeks coming in. We saw it coming considering the kind of count that we've seen for India, the fact that the total tally of the infected stands at 35,000 right now. I guess this is a step in the right direction for the government. We will debate about, of course, the impact on markets as well as the economy in just a bit, but I've got Nayantara Rai, my colleague, as well, joining in the phone line. Nayantara, 2 weeks extension coming in, no less.
That's right. Well, at least it's not by 3 weeks. It has been the trend so far. So 2 weeks time now. So till 17th of May. But what's going to be interesting to see is that what's going to happen as far as the 3 zones go. The Home Ministry, in a very important notification earlier today, the Health Secretary, I beg your pardon, had come out with a classification for all districts. India's being divided into 3 zones: red, yellow and green. So red and yellow, I would imagine, would not be allowed any new economic activity. I think it's pretty much a given and a reasonably educated guess. But what happens to green zones? Green zones, they're talking about lifting a lot of restrictions. So before the 3rd of May midnight, I would imagine now you're going to see a circular coming out from the Home Ministry saying what kind of economic activity. Is it going to be completely opened up? There will be a need to have business continuity, restarting the business engines, economic activity come Monday, 4th of May. So first step would be, I would imagine some kind of a model circular from Home Ministry, which would then be followed up by state guidelines. It's going to be up to every state to come up with its own guidelines and the kind of activity. As a precursor to that, what we've also seen are cities and states having hot zones actually quarantining themselves. Look no further than the national capital. The national capital's border now with Uttar Pradesh, that is the border it shares with Noida, has been sealed off. It's
Nayantara, I'm just going to get back to you. We have with us Mr. Pawan Goenka from Mahindra and Mahindra as well, joining in the phone line. Mr. Goenka, a 2-week extension coming in. You would say a step in the right direction, considering many states in the country, sir, had already gone to phase 3 of COVID-19.
Yes, but first of all, as I see the breaking news, I don't see it as a complete lockdown anymore because the green zone appears to be fully open. The orange zone also appears to be partially open. So one can look at it as partial opening rather than saying it's extended by 2 weeks. Nobody was expecting a full opening anyways. And therefore, what they have done is partial opening. Clearly, the 2 weeks time we have to now use to get ready and prepared to start all the economic activity as soon as we open up. But I do think that green zone opening and orange zone opening or partially opening will get some economic activity going, especially with dealerships opening. The stocks that we have, the inventory that we have will get consumed. There is showroom traffic that we're already seeing after 20th April for the tractors. And therefore, I think we'll have partial economic activity happening. I don't think anybody will be surprised with what was announced today because I don't see it as a complete lockdown, but a partial opening.
Yeah, and Mr. Goenka, that has been happening for a while, like you've been saying, because, from last month end itself, we've seen a lot of the green zones actually, the lockdown getting lifted. A lot of companies have already been up and running. Part of their factories, even some of the auto majors as well, have already got, factories in certain parts up and ready. Would you say that is the most plausible and prudent strategy, a phased lifting of the lockdown, and that's exactly what the government has opted for at this juncture?
Well, I would have to say that government didn't have an option right now of opening up fully. And given that we have so many districts still in red zone, full opening was not possible. And therefore, in the circumstances, partial opening is what they could do. However, I would also say that for many industries like auto, for example, which are very integrated, a partial opening makes it very difficult to start the plants because most of our supplies come from all over India and many of the supplies are in red zone. So therefore, some partial sort of opening of suppliers will also have to happen, and we'll wait to see the details as they're just coming in to see what activity can happen in red zone, if at all. That will then determine whether we can open the plants. We already have approval for running many of our plants. because they fall in green zone or rural area. But we need to see what suppliers can open and what suppliers can come in. So I would think that the economic activity will slowly start picking up. Already started from 20th April. Will probably take a little bit faster pace now. And I think this will allow us to go sort of full blast when we open on now 18th of May. And we should be fully ready then to start our plant in complete sort of capacity. And the dealership movement will start happening even before that, I would hope. So the financial cycle will start. And in a sense, we will go into the rhythm of running our factories, our showrooms, supplying vehicles, all of that. So I think parcel opening that is happening right now, preparing very well during this time, so that from 18th May, from word go, we can start full swing. Would be the thing to do right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Goenka, just stay on the line. My colleague Nayantara Rai has the MHA press release with her. Nayantara, just walk us through what exactly is the press release saying. I'm sure there are details on the lockdown and whether this is still a national lockdown or is it going to be a phase lifting of the lockdown that we'll see, at least for the green and orange zones?
Dr. Goenka, the way he was just pointing out, it's exactly that. You're going to have the three zones, the red, which is the hotspot, green and orange zones. The guidelines have permitted considerable relaxation in the districts that are falling in the green and the orange zones. So, Dr. Goenka, that is now clarified that it's also going to be allowed in the orange zone. What we don't know as yet, unfortunately, the kind of opening up of the activity. And that's exactly what I was pointing out. So I think it's now going to be up to the states to come out with those guidelines. So, it's perhaps also going to differ state to state. In Mumbai, for example, where, you are, Aisha, and Dr. Goenka are, we've been hearing reports of how certain borders have been sealed. It's the same case in New Delhi, the national capital, which is seen as a red zone. So we had earlier seen certain borders being sealed, and the other states have now sealed it. So the neighboring Uttar Pradesh and Haryana, for example, have now proactively also sealed the borders, and even for essential services. I can tell you that in Gurgaon, they have said media persons, for example, who are considered essential, can no longer cross the border on either side. They've also said that for essential services, including trucking. So I think we need to wait and see. The state guidelines is going to differ state to state. So it's the onus is now, of course, over there.
Yeah, absolutely. We have Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw as well joining in on the phone line right now. Ms. Shaw, thanks for joining in. Good evening. Does it come to you as a surprise that the lockdown has been extended for another 2 weeks? Or like Mr. Goenka is saying, when it comes to the green zones, we've already seen a partial upliftment of the lockdown and things are going to be moving in a phased manner?
I think we've always recommended that economic activity should be linked with the risk level. And I think what the government has announced right now is exactly that. The fact that they're allowing economic activities in the amber and green zones is reflective of that. I think it is very sensible to lock down the red zones and make sure that it converts into an amber zone by being very strict about, surveillance on these red zones. And I believe that the kind of legislation that has to be worked out is what you just described. You cannot be sealing borders, because I believe when you talk about zones, you need to look at zones within every state. And if you don't find the red, hotspot at the border, then I don't see why it should be sealed off. Secondly, I think even within cities as large as Delhi, Mumbai, and others, I think it's important to locate zonal red spots rather than zoning of the whole city as a red zone. So I think these kind of exercises will have to be done. I also believe that, we need to start managing the virus, in fact, at a district level, so that district level administration can start managing in a decentralized way. And I really believe that we should be looking at a strategy of test, track, quarantine, and treat. And that's what I think we need to keep doing.
Yeah, absolutely. We have Mr. Vikram Kirloskar as well joining in on the phone line. And Mr. Goenka, stay on with us. I'm going to come right back to you. Mr. Kirloskar, would you be in concurrence with what Kiran just said, that, further dissection of red zones within cities is the next step that the government now needs to look at instead of just, completely red zoning entire cities altogether?
I think each red zone is going to have its own characteristic. Each of the zones are going to have their own characteristics. And I think to a large extent, we should leave it to the local government, the district collector or whoever is in charge of those areas, to come up with whatever his plan is. I certainly don't have enough knowledge of each of the zones or even in the zones around me exactly what is happening, because I've been at home and the only news I'm really getting is television, but it's not from what I have personally seen anywhere. So it's very hard for me to take a call on do X or do Y. But I think we should, I hope they will realistically look at the red zones and see what can start, what cannot start in a red zone, or even make pockets in the red zone. I think that's a very fair suggestion, and I'm sure each district collector, based on his knowledge of that area, will do that. But even, I'll tell you a situation. Our factory is in a green zone. The whole industrial estate where our factory is in a green zone, and the people in the district are in that zone are reluctant for letting us start, saying that you'll have almost a lakh of people coming over to that, not our factory, but the entire industrial estate over 3 shifts and whatever, almost every day, and that's not safe for this entire green district. So don't start right now. So you're in both these kind of situations where supplies are coming from red areas, people are coming from red or orange areas, and that is also not acceptable in a green area because they say we don't want that to become red. So I think I'm waiting for the day when everything opens up, especially for my industry, Dr. Goenka's industry, our companies. We cannot open until our dealers really start opening up, and they're all in the red zone. All the major dealers are all in the red zones across the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mr. Goenka, since you would have, a pulse of things on the ground, considering Maharashtra is a large faction of your business, a large part of your business as well. Help us understand, what Mr. Kirloskar is saying, that this cross flow between the red to the green to the amber zones is what's not really happening, because each zone is becoming more and more watertight right now. So, just help us understand what really is happening on ground right now.
So what Vikram says is absolutely right, that many of our or most of our manufacturing is very interlinked, and it's not possible to start an automotive plant simply because that happens to be in the green or amber zone. Because unless we are able to get all the supplies, we can run the plant by 2 or 3 days, and that's about it, because the supplies that we have today in inventory can probably produce vehicles for 3 days or so. And therefore, limited activity in red zone based on what the local condition is will have to happen. And clearly now that we have this clarity on green zone and amber zone working, we'll start looking at what is coming from red zone and do we have any sort of options on what we can do. But like Vikram said, that many of the dealers will be in the red zone, especially for some brands. For other brands which have more rural focus, probably we have a fairly large number of dealers in the red zone. Now, for auto industry right now, I think everybody will have a supply, different dealers and their plant of finished goods to last maybe 3 to 4 weeks, maybe a little longer. And if the green zone start functioning, as far as dealers are concerned, I think that will get at least 30 to 40% of activity going on the sales side. And that's good, because we need the economic cycle cannot start overnight. It's going to have to start in pieces. And if we can get the vehicle sale to customer financing happen, the dealers getting wholesale financing, and that cycle start happening during this time of 2 weeks using finished good inventory, And then after 2 weeks, we start the supply side. By suppliers starting to supply, by our plants making, supplying new vehicles or newly produced vehicles. I think that will then come in together. And I don't expect everything to start happening together anyways. So it's, in a sense, we can use this as phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is start all the dealerships in green and amber zone, allow us to dispatch the vehicles from our plants, which are finished vehicles, to the dealers. And phase 2 is start the suppliers supplying from all zones and start making new vehicles. Same story in tractors also.
Sure. Kiran, it may be, a little foolhardy to be even delving into such subjects, but just the economic impact of an extension of a lockdown, because many of us on various platforms and shows have been talking about it, and we've had interactions with you as well as to how the economy is grappling with things right now. And like Mr. Kirloskar as well as Mr. Goenka are just highlighting, that up until unless that the entire lockdown is lifted nationwide, things are not getting to normalcy. And even once the national lockdown is lifted, who knows when will life return to normal. Just your sense on whether this really pushbacks the economic cycle. I mean, 2 weeks is a long time. Kiran, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear. Who's this question for?
Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, not Vikram Kirloskar. Kiran, can you hear me? Technology. Okay, Vikram, you go ahead.
Okay. Listen, for the way I've been talking with my company people is saying that the first quarter is going to be a washout. Shutting down is relatively easy. Restarting is very, very difficult. Dr. Goenka has mentioned, I've mentioned this many times, we can't make a car with 99.99% parts. We need 100% of parts. That's one. And if we open up things and things are not sold, it just means costs are going to go up. So the first quarter is going to be pretty much a washout. We have 3 more quarters in this financial year. How to catch up. And I don't think we'll be able to catch up definitely the old numbers. Be lucky if we can hit our 10-year-old targets, I think. So it's going to be a back-breaking year this year financially for sure. And trying to keep nose above water is going to be very, very difficult. This is, it's pretty clear.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mr. Hiranandani is also on the phone line with us. I'm just going to get to him just a bit. But Mr. Goenka, your industry faces the direct heat in that sense because we've seen the monthly sales data and it's been 0 sales for April. There is no option. But, industries like you fall prey to this first.
Okay, so let me just focus for a minute on the tractor side of our business. I'm a little bit more optimistic on what might happen on the tractor side because in the month of April, we had about 4,500 tractors sold from the company to the dealers, and dealers have sold more than 4,500 because of the 10 days of opening partially. That has really helped us to get the cycle going on the tractor side, and June is the peak month for tractor. So if we are able to open up plants on 18th of May, all across India, and all the suppliers are able to open on 18th of May. The good news is that we will catch the season in the tractor side, and we should be able to cater complete demand in the month of June. So that's the positive side, and therefore I'm really hopeful that there is no further extension that is required. And at 18th of May, we can open all across India. The tractor side is taken care of. On the automotive side, while I agree with Vikram on the passenger vehicles and especially metro, but what we are finding in the last 10 days, as we have been doing sort of online calls and trying to see what kind of interest there might be, we are finding a fairly good demand that is coming up for the small commercial vehicle, pickup trucks or smaller vehicles. And in the rural area, the demand for our rural vehicles is pretty good. So what I'm hoping is that as soon as we can start the dealerships, some 18,000-20,000 vehicles that are in the stock between us and the dealers will get sold fairly quickly. And then if we can start the cycle on 18th May, I am hoping that the demand cycle to come back by the time festive season comes back would be a reasonably good, slightly optimistic, but not unrealistic thing to expect. And therefore, this quarter for Mahindra, because of tractor, may not be as bad as it may be for pure automotive companies. Automotive will take much longer because the plants are not starting yet, because the dealers are not starting yet, because the customers may take some time, but tractor may move fairly rapidly.